please don't send slop to your clients. Read it, validate it.
Every leader needs a trusted partner for the moments that matter. This Bold Business Podcast conversation is that partnership. Here is your host, Jess Dewell, an insightful truth teller who serves as the catalyst for getting the right work done and who asks the questions that truly matter.
When a founder comes to you saying, my team is too slow, or we're not getting the right things done, how do you cut through the noise and find the real root cause? Today, we're exploring the raw and real truths about how to architect a resilient delivery system and create real outcomes in these crazy times. Today, Thanos Diacakis, CEO and Chief Troublemaker at Cosmic Teacups, is joining me. He has over 25 years of hands-on experience in software development. He works with founders to overcome bottlenecks, scale engineering teams, and deliver high-quality products faster and of higher quality. His background spans both early-stage ventures as well as with tech giants, and he's led the technical integration of many lines of business, including jump bikes. In today's episode, you will hear 3 vital takeaways that will immediately help you with your team today. First, why constructive and creative conflict is important for teams to actually work through. Second, the reality that our goal is to make money, so the product must ship. To do it better, faster, and happier, you must know the single priority you're working toward. And third, the power to name a situation and go forward through it. It may be awkward, yet when we do our work together, the way we work together evolves and increases our overall connectedness, happiness, and value to the end goal. Are you ready to step back and stop chasing these arbitrary milestones and remove the friction? You can, and stay competitive by looking at things differently. Here's my conversation with Thanos. So there's this concept of mindset that has to show up in the way we think about our opportunities and our challenges today. You are specifically working with shipping quicker, spending less money. And so what kind of thought processes and what kind of mindset are you already in that you're bringing to the companies that you work with?
Well, the starting place for me is humility and the idea that the easiest person to fool is yourself. So if you start with that, then we're in a good spot. If you think you know everything, then well, probably wouldn't have called me. But uh, right, if you begin from the fact that it's really tough to figure out what is actually going on here, then you can actually start making some gains and starting picking things apart and figure out where they stand. If you think that, what I've been doing is great and I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, then you're probably going to have a hard time getting somewhere. But yeah, you basically doubt everything, eliminate all the assumptions that got you into trouble and then figure out how to untangle things from there.
Assumptions. How do you find assumptions?
Well, everything, like pretty much everything is an assumption, right? Because we don't often have the ability to go back from square one and say, well, let's start with gravity. Like, how does that start? Like, okay, well, gravity seems pretty plausible. And,
Yeah.
Newton figured this out, and then everyone else behind that didn't really object, so we'll keep that as a given. But more seriously, sort of bringing that back into like software engineering and product development in general, there are a bunch of things that we do, and there's a bunch of these things that actually work. And have you heard the story with the apes in the cage? And I've tried to look whether this is true or not, and I haven't found whether this is true or not. But the idea is that you have a bunch of apes in the cage with a ladder, bananas on top. Apes climb in the cage. When they try to get the bananas, they get sprayed with cold water and they stop climbing up the ladder pretty quickly. So then you take one ape, you get him out, put a new one in, he's trying to climb the ladder, and the other apes will just pull him down the ladder because they don't want to get wet. And you keep replacing all the apes until none of the apes have ever gotten wet, but they will not dare go up the ladder and they'll beat everyone up that tries to go up the ladder. It's kind of like, hey kid, that's how we do things over here. We don't know why, but if the ape goes up the ladder, we just pull him down because going up the ladder is bad, right? And
Uh-huh.
if you put this in real actual terms, what we did is we had some constraint. Bob was the guy that knew everything, so we're going to protect Bob's time. Or Friday was a bad day for doing releases because we didn't have testing covered, so we're going to never release on Fridays. So you build all these rules and then you fix your automatic testing, but you still don't release on Fridays. Why? Because you forgot you made that rule to protect the constraint. So again, you start figuring out like what of these things make sense, which can we prove that are plausible, which have like reasonable data behind them. You're not going to be able to do this everything to perfection, right? But you can start poking around some of these ideas, and with some experience, you can kind of look and say, okay, that probably smells bad. Let's go take another look at that thing.
I think you bring up a really good point about how what we've always done is a place where assumptions start. And what you named, Thanos, in that sharing really points out it's things we would take for granted every day. And there this concept of an evolution of time, it is. It's not even knowledge worth having, yet alone it is part of the core common knowledge, even if it gets wiped out and we don't know where it came from. Uh, Having what is it, new people on the team, third party advisors, you and your team coming in, going back to that mindset piece, it's amazing to me how many people want third party opinion to validate, not to actually tell them the truth.
Yeah, that's always fun.
How much, I mean, do you get that a lot too?
Yeah, sometimes I change my title to Chief Troublemaker because you kind of go in and you kind of gonna go poke something in the eye and see what comes out.
Yeah.
And I try to find teams to work with that are receptive to this because that's when it's fun, right? When teams engage with you and figure out how to go and fix something because they're really motivated. I think if a team wants to, could just go prove that what they're doing is good, then I'd probably send them off to take someone else's money, um, go do
Well,
something
and
else.
right? Yeah. I like troublemaker. I'm a pot stirrer myself. I'm a bear poker. I also bring a lot of honey. Usually, though, it doesn't calm a
Well,
gingerbread.
you don't wanna do this. I mean, this is not having conflict for the fun of having conflict, right?
Of
But this is
course.
stirring conflict in the right way. I call it like constructive conflict or creative
Yes.
conflict, where you have 2 different teams and they have needs, and we can talk about specific examples of how this usually happens in software, but they don't have the right words to talk to each other about their needs, so their needs go unmet because they don't know the words to use with each other. Whereas when you create the right words and the right environment, you can now have each of the teams communicate their needs to the other team and have this creative conflict, which is basically resolving a way to do both in the right
Uh-huh.
ratio. And then that's how you have better outcomes. Like if one team just keeps ignoring the other team, or the one team hides what they do so the other team doesn't know that they're spending time on this thing that they don't understand, that's how you end up with sort of suboptimal outcomes. And you kind of took me to a thread earlier that made me think of this, but um, people are busy. They don't always like not find the right solutions because they're stupid or not knowledgeable, but they have this one thing that they're focused on. And they don't want to, go look back and see how they do the work. So when my very much younger self used to think, oh, that those guys are stupid. They clearly could do this in these 8 different ways, but they're not. And it turns out they were not stupid. They're just really, really busy. And sometimes like going getting outside help is something that creates, just it can be perspective, but it can also be time, right? Because that person, you don't have time to figure this out. So help us do this quickly. So let's get effective in doing these things. How do we allocate the least amount of time that we can on this other thing to get the maximum amount of results that we can do?
Mhm.
So that's kind of the time aspect. The perspective is actually also an interesting one because usually where there's like a cause and effect, right? I press this and that sort of pops out. It's easy to see, okay, we want more of this, let's press it more. We want less of that, let's press it less. But sometimes the cause and effect is hidden. And it takes, being burnt and having the scars or the experience or whatever you want to call it of being able to see these things. So that's where sometimes like a slightly different perspective can get you into a mode of thinking that gets you out of your rut. Because sometimes teams are not going fast enough and the right answer there is actually we need to slow down. You have too much stuff in your pipeline that is making you churn and just switch and context switch a lot. So if you actually want to go faster, you got to pull half of that out. And then the speed goes up. It's like, wow, like that was not intuitive. We wanted to ask our team to do more, and now ask them to do less, and we actually go more.
There's so many things just in that. Okay, so I wrote some things down and we'll see where this takes us. The first, this concept of cause and effect and rules. It's easy to create rules. It seems harder to create standards. And by the way, I think that's and so I'm going to say that. Then I'm going to say I'm listening to not causing conflict for the sake of conflict, which I think is really important. And I think when we recognize conflict keeps coming up and we look at somebody and go, "Ooh, they're always going to talk about this thing again. And it's something we always can't get past and it takes up all of our meeting time or whatever it is. Or, man, we've been working on this and we just can't make any progress. I wish they'd get off our back a little and give us a different approach or something, right? It doesn't, when those types of things start showing up, I think that's when the gaps are there. And that's where an outside perspective coming in with that intention of positive outcome through understanding what the friction and the tensions are make all the difference.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not necessarily that you're gonna figure it out, right? Because sometimes as an
You can't.
outsider, yeah, you
Yeah.
don't know what this thing is or how it works, but you can
But
start
you
by
can
asking
share
the
it.
right questions, right? Bob has
Yeah.
brought this 8 times and you haven't responded to it, like, why is Bob so annoyed about this? And maybe Bob hasn't been using the right words to express what he means. And we see this a lot with technical teams, right? A lot of technical teams have a particular way of describing and discussing things that doesn't exactly resonate. And I fault my profession partly for doing this because you cannot be expected. Let's take like technical debt for example. Something gets talked about. You not be expected to get a third of your time carved out to go do these very valuable things that you ought to be doing if you can't
Right.
explain it clearly enough. Because no one's going to say, "Hey Thanos, yeah, go play for 2 days a week and do this thing." Because yeah, that sounds cool. But if you say, "Hey, our velocity is kind of X, and it will be half X in 6 months if we don't do this, and if we do roughly this many hours of that, we will still stay at X." Oh, okay, now we can get our heads around this and get to
Mhm.
something productive.
Right? It is. It's being able to look at the same thing in a different way and ask a different question or state something that makes somebody else ask a really good question. I'm all on board for that too. I don't need to know anything, but if I can say something and I can cause somebody to ask a question or to say something differently, we know we might be on the right track to finding that progress forward of to the next. So rules versus standards. I was listening to you and I was hearing that cause and effect. I think of cause and effect as a rule with a yes or a no, right? Or a true or a false. How do you meet me there or do you go someplace else?
Uh, so rules are sort of like we've agreed that the best way of doing this kind of thing is this, so let's try to do that in the future, right?
Yeah.
And generally speaking, those work, but we tend to forget why we put that rule in place to begin with. So when the reason doesn't make sense anymore, the rule doesn't make sense anymore. So nowadays we try to do things where we write the rule, but we write why we did the rule with it. So
Yeah.
when we're going back looking at it, we can say, um, "Hey, that's why we had this doesn't make sense anymore. Let's kill it." I didn't fully track the yes or no aspect of this. Is like does this new thing we're
Is it
trying to do meet the rule or doesn't meet the rule or
Yeah, it doesn't mean you answered the question. You that was what I think that's what I was looking for from you is okay, so we are actually working in the same place. I was just trying to say it with less words.
yeah.
Um
But again, you put rules in place. So rules are
yeah.
something that you put in place because it's the fastest lever you typically have to do something, right? Someone from the top
Yes.
down comes and says, "I will make this rule because I see this thing." Now,
Yeah.
rules tend not to particularly be really good to change culture because culture takes a much longer time. So
Mhm.
for a culture to change, you have to change the rule, then you have to put the rule into application by demonstrating it and doing it yourself and getting a bunch of others to imitate it, proving that the rule is actually working fairly well. Although sometimes some things get adopted into culture that actually don't work fairly well and it still becomes sort of the culture. You've heard of the
Yeah.
maybe cliche of culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you can make any number of procedures and rules, but if the culture is different, then your rules can get ignored and no one's
Doesn't
going
really
to
matter.
follow it and
Yeah.
nothing's really going to happen.
Feeling stuck? Like, what got you here won't get you there. The pressure to grow is on, yet the path isn't clear yet. You don't have to walk that path alone. This is the Bold Business Podcast. Like and subscribe wherever you listen. Your host, Jess Dewell, is the strategic partner you've been looking for, asking the questions that truly matter. It's time to break the inertia and get the perspective you need to make your next move.
Thanos Diacakis is visiting me on the Bold Business Podcast today. I'm your host, Jess Dewell. He is the CEO and Chief Troublemaker of Cosmic Teacups. They really don't apply the same way, right? The relational piece of how we talk to each other, and you were talking about the needs and the misunderstoodness, or the problems of each part of the team in two different groups, or even two different individuals on the in the same work group. That once that's figured out, progress can be made. And I appreciate how you talked about rules are the fastest way to see a new result. And if that's all they're for, and I actually really was like, and we wrote down why we do it this way. Because I will tell you, every for us non-technical people listening, this is just for you because I am not a technical person that can understand all this technical stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, it works in real life too. It works just when you're in a meeting. It works when you're in the grocery store. It works when you're making your dinner. And when you're solving your own problems and doing your own deep work in your role at your organization. And I think that that's a pretty big piece to recognize because when we're bouncing around between standards, there's edges, there's different approaches, right? The way we see it, hear it, feel it. Are we action oriented? Do we have to think about it first? Do we really like a rule to start from to create a way that we're doing our work together? And it leaves space for that evolution to be in place.
Yeah, and if you standardize too early, then you often will miss out on that evolution, right? If we make a rule and say, "Hey, we have this new AI tool, I'm going to use this one, and you're going to sign a 1 year contract," well, newsflash, that's not going to work out really well for you because those change so quickly that you might want a different one in like 2 months. So you
Yeah.
probably want to keep some place for experimentation in that to allow for that change. You may want to standardize carefully, selectively, just a little bit, with ready to revise those standards. We see this a lot in technology, especially where it's like really
Yeah.
quickly changing in many areas. A lot of times we make the analogy that it's a paved road, right? Standards give you the paved road, and you can
Yeah.
run on the paved road, and things will be smoother. But if you want to experiment and go take that shortcut over there, go for it. You might hit a cliff at some point in time. Okay, you might have to figure out how to get back from that. You might find another really fast way of getting somewhere, in which case we might go pave it over there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so on. But you get the analogy,
Yeah.
right? It's like it gives you some advantages, but it's not like standards do not it is not just a panacea where you just implement standards for everything, and now it's like that's fantastic. That's how you get really big, stiff, bureaucratic organizations where you can't really get anything done.
And it doesn't matter if you're 2 people with a lot of it, you still become a big, stiff
Yeah.
organization that can't get anything done.
Yeah. So I mean, you can
Yeah.
start with rules, but then you got to figure out like how do I make this into culture? How to make this making sure it's
Mhm.
actually productive and does it actually do something for me? I was flying yesterday and they said for the safety while we're landing, you got to put your window things up.
Yeah.
I know half the airlines do it and half the other ones don't. So I'm sure like if we go look at the stats, we'll correlate. Everyone that had their window shades up, they crashed. No one else did. Like
Ah.
there's some rules that just doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. No kidding. Well, so I'm thinking about this and then we were taught you also talked about if you pull all this stuff out, you can do so much stuff faster, right? This less is more. I'm a super fan of less is more, Thanos. And so I have to tell you that in my world, I talk about distraction debt. When you talk about pulling stuff out for less is more, is it also because it's a distraction in a technical sense, or is it something else entirely?
It's mostly because of distraction, but there's
Yeah.
these other things that play in there as well. So most of these rules, by the way, that we talk about in software, we're actually taken out from lean manufacturing.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
kind of the same idea, the same way that you have some ideas and you do some stuff in between, and software comes out the other end, and that's kind of my industry. You have a factory, and you put some materials in, and you do some transformations, and a widget comes out the other side. So if you shove in too much work, the
Yeah.
analogy there is now you're like reconfiguring the machines all the time. You're spending all this time like switching things that is tough, and you're sort of distracting people. Although, like, you actually do want to get good at that, and be able to make these switches quickly. That's actually makes you really efficient. But also, you have all this half completed work that is sitting around. So, like, I worked on this. Now I switch context and work on that. Now this, like, if it's inventory in a factory floor, it gets rusty, it gets lost, it gets tripped over. If it's software, it just, you can't merge it back into your code because it gets too old. So there's all these problems of this
Yeah.
is a focus switching, but producing those intermediate artifacts that are sitting around that until they get shipped, they add no value. If you have a half-made widget, you can't sell it because it's sitting
Right.
on the factory floor and things can happen to it. If you have half-built software, you can't sell it. So the idea there is structure your teams and your projects in a way where thing go in, thing go out, and now, when thing goes out in software or in mostly any kind of business, that's
Yeah.
kind of where you
Yeah.
collect cash, right? If you
Yep.
ship whatever you're shipping to one place, like what one client I work with, they work with shops to do aircraft maintenance. The plane goes in, you can't invoice until the plane goes out. If the plane's sitting in the hangar, it's taking up space. and no money is coming in. So same kind of idea that you apply there. If you do less, you can get more stuff done. And guess what? The guy that you're telling go fix this plane, then go fix that plane, then go fix that plane, they're not happy, right? They're stressed because they have to do a bunch of things, jumping between things, and they quit and go work for someone else that does
Mhm.
things in a more sane way. So you open this by saying, I hope things go faster and better quality. But like one of the super duper things that we try to shoot for is happiness. Because when you do things happy, your quality actually goes up because no one's like cranky with each other and they actually do their best work, and your speed goes up. So I think we need to put that in any kind of area of work. That if you have this thing where everyone's kind of always on edge, we need to make it go happy again too.
You know, okay, I think I agree. What you're talking about with half-built things, every single person listening, regardless of the role that they're in, could look around their office, their to-do list, wherever they're keeping it, if it's physical papers, if it's a digital list, if it's whatever, and actually take a look right now and say, what has been half done for some period of time? Pick a period of time. How about it could be as little as 30 days, it could be as many as 3 months. If it's anything else, I think you should just put it in some sort of a bin, digital or otherwise. Just it's not the right time or place. Okay. So so in that, do you have a way to assess what it are you just looking around like that and saying, "Hey, this is what we see that's kind of half done. What is this?" Or are you are you listening because people are telling you what's half done or what's not getting done, and that's something that you're bringing to the table and going, "Ooh, these are our options to find what to pause, shelve, stop."
Yeah, so I'll give you two versions of this. The
Yeah.
general version is a really good book that's just called Making Work Visible. And
Oh,
the
yeah.
idea is take any kind of system, whether it's software or anything else that you're doing, and make your system visible. If you can't see it, you can't measure it, you can't judge it, it's really hard to make improvements. If, as you were saying, what I go just look around my office all day and find for things that are half done, that's not going to be a super productive use of time. With software, we do the same thing. I've actually built a custom tool that I use with all my clients that tries to take all the stuff that you do and make it sort of pop out so you can see it with charts, right? So I have one
Yeah.
chart that I see how many things that we do every day. I have a
Mhm.
second chart that shows me like how is that stuff distributed across different categories of work. I use something called the flow framework for that, which breaks for software its features, bugs, investments, and risk items. So we kind of need to know what is the kind of ratio of these things, right? We want to be building lots of features, but if we're spending our time building lots of bugs, then we need to make some investments so the quality goes back up and the bugs go down and the feature time goes up.
Mhm.
And then how long does everything fit in each bucket? So if we see, hey, from when I file something in there till someone picks it up, it takes this long. Well, I can go look and find out why. And the answer often surprises you. Or if something, I put this code in here and it's waiting for someone's review in here because people didn't happen to be looking in that bucket. Okay, well, let's fix that problem. And then you can find, using this tool, I can sort of start spotting where the bottlenecks are and
Mhm.
seeing, okay, let's go investigate this. Let's go investigate that. And that makes it easy. So build that tool for you, right? If you're in software, we can leave some notes and people can go play with my tool. But if you're in
Yeah.
any other space, like you can use and make your own kind of like um, system to figure out how work flows through it and then kind of optimize that.
I like that. Well, and I guess I'll go back to if you just look around and find half projects around that you're not doing anything, I agree. On a regular basis, that is not the right thing to be doing. Well, as far as work goes for anybody. However, if you don't believe what is being shared here, look around your office because I think there's something here. That's where I was going with that. How's that for an
Yeah.
intro? Where I'm going back to that very beginning where we have we have to shift our mindset. We know something's not working right, so where do we go? This could be one of those places.
And you'll have
That
to find your artifacts, right? Your artifacts could be
Yep.
physical things lying around, or they could be actual virtual things. They could be like that. You with a messy desktop, you know who you are. Or you with the thousand Chrome tabs.
Oh, okay,
Things
do
keep
how many
important.
hands do I get? I have, I am a person yes, my brain operates like all the tabs open in a browser. Yes, um, I actually still use paper, uh, but it doesn't stay around, actually. That just helps me in the moment. But you're right, we do know who we are. I'll claim it. Cla
And by the way, don't feel bad. You're not alone, right? That's how our brains work. That's how we adapt. But I think the symptom number one is okay. Let's recognize this. Now, what do we do about this? When I have like more than 10 tabs, I stress out because now there's things that are going to get lost because I know I'm going to just close that window at some point because I've had it. So I
I
go
do
back
that
and
too
see,
because
okay,
it
why
doesn't
am I
matter
stressing?
anymore. I mean, not
I'll just
actually, and sometimes I forget. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, no, I was done with that a long time ago."
I'll just ask my AI. Just go figure out what I was doing before and finish it off for me.
You know what? That's actually something I will. Okay, we're gonna totally pause right there. I love having tools that are smarter than me, do research for me, distill things for me, validate things for me that I can then just use and then decide where do I need to validate more? What could this problem actually be? How could this work? And so I really appreciate you saying that because I think I can get down to maybe only 10 tabs open from just that tool from bazillions of windows.
The browsers aren't
Literally.
quite good there, but I think that sort
I
of
know.
applies to a lot of areas before because, like,
I
some point in
agree.
time, I would need okay, some client actually asked me about this yesterday, and they're having this particular problem, and I was like, "Okay, I go write you, like, a three-page document explaining how to solve this." And in the before times, it would take me, like, a couple of hours to write them a nice three-page document,
Yeah. Yeah.
whereas
And
this time it
now,
took me 5 minutes. Claude did it,
yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I then spent 20 more minutes having 3 or 4 back and forths really adding value and saying, "Okay,
Yep.
that's nice, but I wanna optimize on this. Go research this and write me 5 more bullets for that. Go find
Yep.
this." So you can bubble up instead of, like, editing the document and making sure it's in, like, the nice English with the right sort of tenses. I can now really give you the value, and someone else writes a document, and
Yeah.
then it was like, "Okay, it was 4 pages, that's too long. Let's make it 2 because no one wants to read 4." It's really
Yeah.
nicely summarized, and the reviews there are, like, key, right? Don't please don't send slop to your clients. Um, Read it, validate it.
Yes. It does not, take away I mean, it does not take away and I don't even it's not even a quality control thing. It's a there need an ownership of a brand is necessary, and knowing what is going out is one of the most important things only because we don't know when our credibility is always on the line. How people view us and what they expect from us is always evolving based off of what we send them. You are so right.
And it was
Uh,
never easier to do because if Claude had generated something, just using not picking on Claude, but generated something that was incorrect, it just takes you like one sentence you can dictate to your computer and say that paragraph's too weak sauce, just fix it this way. Done. Like so there's no excuse for shipping out bad stuff. You can really move
Agreed.
it up to the level of abstraction, really get all your knowledge like nicely distilled and mean what you mean without putting the work on others to clean up your AI mess.
I love that a lot. You said you have a tool that we can link to in the show notes?
Yes, it's teammetrics.dev with a hyphen in between the team and the metrics, and it works with linear right now. I don't really incline to make it work with any other tool. So if you use Jira, then this might be a good time to switch to linear. Um,
And then well, that's that and does it give you is it just does it have a little bit of an overview? Because 'Cause I'm thinking, I'm not a developer, but I definitely know that there are ways that I'm always looking for things that are half done. And prioritization, especially at a strategic level, can benefit from a tool like this versus having to sit down and really think about it because everybody knows what's all around. We just can't always name it. And so when we're in doing our work, being in our space and really working to stay creative, find the constraints that matter today, understanding what those levers are with which we can be faster, better, more efficient, and most importantly, add value while staying happy. I really like that happy part that you brought in earlier. Um, it's so important on that strategic level because there's so much more and it is like a big cloud, which is okay. And we still have to prioritize because that big cloud can have all kinds of things, but it's gonna I equate it to like ripples. Wherever the rock went into the water, that is that point of origin. And that's where the real stuff is actually happening. Depending on where it is and the ripples out, it may or may not have impact today or make sense today or be right today from all kinds of perspectives. And that's where I tend to play is making sure everything's in the right ripple and we're staying as close to that action point as possible.
yeah, I was in a client meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we wrote a bunch of stuff on the board that we wanted to do. And then one of the people there, no names named, went and wrote the priorities next to them, and they put the number one next to like no less than 7 items. And it's like, dude, you cannot have more priorities than arms. Like that is just not possible. We're
But it wasn't quite enough for an octopus, though.
No,
7.
I think they would have trouble. But in all seriousness, there's,
It's true.
the team metrics tool will help you if you're doing software stuff and it's in linear, so it's fairly limited to that.
Okay.
But all this stuff came from lean manufacturing, and there's a really good book called The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt. It's focused on manufacturing,
Uh-huh.
but it's really fun because it's a business novel, so it's a really fun read. because it talks about what is the goal. Like they had a factory, and they're trying to talk about what the goal of the factory is, right? And I don't want to
Yeah.
give this the ending away,
Yeah.
um, but you go through a lot of stuff. The same thing we do with any business. Like the goal is not to stay busy. The goal is not to just be in your little mouse wheel and be running all day. The goal is to be shipping stuff out the other end because that's how cash comes in, and that's the lifeblood of any business. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how we start when we look at. So when I looked at these 8 or 9 priorities that we had in that meeting, it's okay. What is our goal here? What is the outcome they want to have? Oh, it's this. Okay, well which of these goals do you think that highlights? Well, that one and that one. Well, why don't we make those number one and then make everything else number two
Yeah.
and work our way down the list?
How many ones did you have at the end? You went from 7 or 8 to how many?
You want to have one number one. You want to have
That's
that
right.
one and ship it, and then you want to have more when you ship that one. So think about it this way, right? If you have 5 things that are going to take you 1 week,
Yep.
each. You can ship one the first week, collect some
Mhm.
cash at the end of that, ship the
Yep.
second one, collect some cash after that, ship the third one, and so on, right? Until you
Uh-huh.
collected 5 chunks of cash as you go along. Again, metaphorically, it's not always exactly like that, but the idea still holds. Or you could do them all at the same time.
Yeah.
So you could do Monday on this one, Tuesday on that one, Wednesday on that one, repeat that for 5 weeks, and you ship them all at the end. Well, which
Yep.
one is better? So not only did you wait 5 weeks till you made any money, but
Right.
also maybe doing number one informed you of, oh crap, like I want to take number two and do it this way instead because I actually learned something from number one. And
Mhm.
number three is going to be completely different.
Mhm.
4 and 5 we're never going to do them. That was a terrible idea. That going back to the humility we talked about in the end. So work in small cycles, do little iterations, learn from these things, right? The good organizations not only like ship stuff, they go look at how they do the work, they change how they do the work, they learn from how they do the work and become faster. So if you're doing the work and your competition is doing the work and being introspective of how they do it and improving it, they're going to be taking your lunch real soon.
If your week feels like you're being pulled from one demand to the next, this is for you. The daily grind is the #1 killer of business instinct, pulling you and your team away from your vision. Reclaim your strategic edge with the present retreat. This free guide from Red Direction is a simple, powerful framework to carve out the space you need, to filter out the noise, make the right decisions, and lead with clarity. Visit presentretreat.com.
Thanos Diacakis is visiting me on the Bold Business Podcast today. I'm your host, Jess Dewell. He is the CEO and Chief Troublemaker of Cosmic Teacups. People get really hung up on March of this year by this thing and blah blah blah. And I'm like, hey, all you're doing is putting a stake in the sand, and you're thinking that's where the treasure is when you get there. It could show up the previous November. It might not show up till the May past it. All you're doing is saying this is the direction that we are going, and everything else comes into place along the way. And that small iterative learn as you go and find the things not to do before they're done. I think that's the coolest thing I have heard in weeks. Let me just be real with you, and I'm going to keep that one. Like, no, don't do them all at once because something is a bad idea. You just don't know which one it is yet.
It is exciting times to be alive. I used to work for a company that every September they would pull all their brightest people, bring them on site for an ungodly amount of money. And for 3 weeks, they would do planning. And then they'd ship them all back, and we'd start executing sometime in October. And by November, the plan wouldn't look like anything like what was on paper in September. It would be completely different. And then next year, we'd get around in September and do this thing. I was like, guys, did we look at what the outcome of this 3 week thing was? Like, did we actually like follow through with any of this plan? Like, we built like 10% of what was on the list. It's like, why are we doing this insanity?
See, I'm telling you, and that comes back down to the priorities. If we think it's the priority or there's a secondary or third supporting thing that turns out to not be the case, I really hope somebody stands up and says, "Look, let's just get it off and evolve." I'm a big believer in dynamic plans. Yeah, you've got a place you're going. Yeah, you've got people you are responsible for and reporting to even, you know, as a company, I get it. And at the same point in time, when we put end dates on things or we say, oh, here's an opportunity to optimize, here's an opportunity to take a turn that actually turns out to get us to where we want to go faster or differently or competitively because things change, that's actually really where we need the courage, in my opinion, to stand up and say, hey, let's be here a minute.
Have you heard the? I don't know if it's a cliche by this point in time, but there's the expression planning is worth its weight in gold, but plans are worthless. Maybe it's the
Yes.
order because right. planning makes you think about what is the push and
Yes.
pull, what depends on what
Yes.
is interesting, what do I get value from? Like,
Yes.
okay, yeah, generate the plan, that's gonna change in day 2, but now you've done through the thinking of, okay, now I see all that change, but I know that this one depends on that one, so maybe I'll rejigger it this way or that way.
Yes.
And I found out that and this is happens a lot of times in software organizations where they don't have the ability to deliver. So they make these plans for a year and they can't predict like a week out. And they come in and say, "Hey, like one company I used to work with, the boss would give you this thing, and they want him to get it done in a month, and it eventually would take 3, and they get frustrated. And the next time they gave you sort of more details and more rules and more deadlines, and the team didn't have the ability to execute, but they're trying to like plan. So they're spending all the time just planning, no time executing or reducing risk. So I kind of tend to flip that on its head and say, you're not going to do any
Mm.
planning whatsoever until you can show me you can execute like stuff that takes a day, build it in a day. Okay, now we've done that a couple dozen times. Now we can maybe think about 2 days or a
Yes.
week. And when we're good
Yes.
at like, planning a week or a month out, then we can talk about quarters or maybe years if you get
Yes.
really, really good. Like this 3-year plans and it's just complete insanity. But if you try to execute, if you try to plan without having the ability to execute, you're just completely doing this backwards because you don't know what your team is. You don't know how your team
Yes.
works. So figure out how to
Yes.
break things in small pieces. And usually, if you go in and say, you know what, I can't tell you anymore, um, what you're gonna have a year from now. Like, sorry, no roadmap for now. People become a little skittish, so you can sort of diffuse that by saying, well, how did the last roadmap work out? Like, did anyone really actually follow it? Did
Yes.
anyone deliver on time? No. Okay, so now that we established it is
Yep.
worthless, I'll give you
Yep.
something else in return. You'll give me something small that you really wanted, and I'll get that done to you in a week.
Yep.
And then you can establish like some trust and then repeatability. And again, I think that's why we do it in software, but I think it really works out in a lot of other places where you can just do the same thing, small chunks over and over.
It does. And I would say finding a way to have them work together really matters because knowing what's coming, knowing where we think we're going, understanding the competitive landscape, it doesn't matter if it's 3 years out. I mean, heck, 3 years is like 3 months right now. So, as far as some things and regarding change, and it might even be faster than that. So, all we can do is say, "Yeah, that's where we think." But if it arrives faster, so what? We've already been dynamic. We're already doing this, and I do appreciate the call out to trust. And I was actually gonna ask you, um, is that the biggest problem that you see teams as they grow, uh, start sabotaging their own scale and their own opportunity? Is it a lack of trust? Is it some of the things that we have already talked about where there's just too many things and there's not a way to prioritize? Is it something else?
I think it often devolves to a lack of trust, but I don't think, at least in the circles I hang out with, I've sort of seen self sabotage be the way that you get there. I think
Okay.
how I've seen it work is they just constantly diverge without making sort of the effort to converge, and it
Yeah.
just slowly goes to sort of a bad place, right? So we didn't have this discussion last time because it was a little awkward. We'll just keep putting it off. That never actually happens. We do our thing, you do your thing. We won't tell you about this thing that we did in the time we spent doing this thing because last time we told you, you yelled at us, but we know we really need to do it. Let's just chat about it. We'll just keep doing it.
Okay.
And at some point
Avoidance, huh?
when push comes to shove, that doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, avoidance is kind of self-sabotage. Just it's a preservation thing, right? I mean, there's a little bit about that. I'm not saying it's done on purpose. I'm totally
Yeah.
believe it's like a blind spot. It's a thing that happens because we want to keep the peace, because we want to work together, because we want to see all of this stuff happen. And we don't want it to be too crunchy and spiky along the way either, or edgy.
Yeah, and I think that's where you have to make it super, super clear in it not to be spiky. I was in a meeting actually yesterday, and we started doing like a little retrospective, and good team. We worked together really well.
Yeah.
And I had to jump in before we even started. It's like, hey, let's just remind ourselves the rules of like these are blameless. We're just trying to figure out where the system is broken. No one did anything wrong because we were starting with like, okay, like we got to find who broke this, and we're going to very quickly get to who broke it. And we're gonna be like extremely clear that, hey, dude, like everyone breaks these things. I broke it. That you broke it this time. It was me last time. So really, no big deal. Here's how we fix it as a team. And but making these efforts, these opportunities come up, and they take a little effort to lean into the awkward and just have that conversation and sound a little weird. But get that out in the open and make sure that hey, we're all going to the same place. We all succeed if the company succeeds. We all succeed if the project succeeds. Here's how we do it together. And I'm really not fighting you. We're fighting kind of fixing the system.
And I think that I'm going to and you in the sense that one of the things I heard you talk about early on that really ties in here is that mindset piece. Awkwardness is great. And even if we've worked together, when we find a habit in the way that we work together, that comfort level, even anything that's also good can be uncomfortable and just as awkward as something not good, like something broke. And so if we can normalize both sides of that in terms of, because that's where I hear you coming from. I kind of hear you working around this in a couple of different ways throughout our conversation. And it's like, oh, well, let's normalize the really good at a very personal level so that, and it's going to be awkward at first. And then when things don't go well, it might be awkward, but hey, we're still all on the same team and we want to fix it. So let's just name it and go. And over here, let's just name it and go.
The name it and go is actually my favorite trick that I use when I want to bring up a difficult subject, because if I just verbalize what I'm thinking, it makes it just the awkwardness disappear and saying, hey, I want to talk about this. And I feel really awkward about talking about this because I don't want to annoy you guys by bringing this up for the eighth time, or because I don't want to annoy so and so person kind of sensitive about this because of this reason. But I also think it's probably good to do this because of these reasons. So I feel awkward bringing this up, but like I think we should probably talk about it, right? And you kind of like called out what's happening in your head, right? So I don't feel like I can be misunderstood because it's basically laid out why I think this is a little weird, and people can then challenge. Say, "Oh no, actually no, I didn't feel offended when you said that. Great, okay, let's have this discussion." Or, "No, no, no, the premise that you had for this is completely wrong. Great, let's talk about why that is." Right. So you can like diffuse it
Mhm.
and just go into it. I see my kids don't know how to do that yet, and it's like, "Oh, that's just too weird to talk about that. Let's just like run away." It's like you just lay out why it's in your head, because if you just tell your whoever, teacher, boss, whatever, what is happening, they'll be like, oh, that seems like a reasonable concern that you had. Well, let me allay your concerns by talking about it in this way.
Mhm. Um, yes. And all of us can practice today being a little awkward and weird because I'm not sure I had the best model growing up. And I tend to be clunky and awkward. But hey, at the same point in time, I'm willing to name things to go forward that other people aren't. So we'll just claim it and go in the sake of how do we move forward together? How do we make progress instead of spin our wheels? How do we actually get our time shifted? Because I think that's a big part of this too is if we can do more faster and if we can build trust in the small processes and learn how to figure out what those bigger projects are and be able to do that over time, I also think that matters for us and our own happiness too.
And
Did
it
you
has
have a
to come from a
happiness
place of
discovery?
caring too, right? It has to come because
Yeah.
I care about you in a person. I care about this
Yeah.
project to succeeding. If you come across because I care because I want to get this promotion, then no one's going to really work for you. And if you're the boss of that person, you have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have to go through a period where you had to rediscover your happiness? Is that why it's a big part of
Just
what you do
once?
today? Yeah, okay. Fair. Point taken. Uh, understood.
Yeah, I think I've had to do this many, many times, and it's kind of interesting, right? Because one of the I don't want to say problems, but it's maybe a bit of a problem in some ways. Like I really like my work. I really identify with what I do. I really enjoy like bringing success to the projects that I work with and doing all that stuff. So I can really get into it. And then sometimes it's like, you know what? While I really like doing this thing and I wanted to be successful, if I didn't do this thing tonight and it happened tomorrow, and it would be like, yeah, it would be a little bit late, but I didn't miss this family thing. Um,
Yeah.
as I get older, it's like, yeah, you know what? That can actually wait. And it's a little bit of a struggle, right? Because I also don't want these people to be unhappy with me, or I don't want this thing to be late. But at the same time, sometimes I had to make these choices. If you ask me, like, what that project happened for that company that I worked with 25 years ago, yeah, that company, like, failed. Okay, so if I, hadn't missed that family thing, nothing would have happened. Would have felt just
Yeah.
the same. Right now, again, you don't want to sabotage your own success by doing this thing, but I think that's something that's in my head of like, okay, well, how do I strike? What is the right balance to do that? And it's always a struggle, right? You always kind of lean this way, and when something's exciting, you lean back that way, and it's just kind of keep finding and keep looking for that median.
And I know and this is, we've been talking about iteration for speed, optimization, cash flow. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm going to ask you a different kind of a question.
Well, if you asked me 6 months ago, I could tell you now. I have no idea.
Fair. I'm on board with that. I don't know. I know I'm going to be somewhere. I know I'm going to hopefully be having a lot of fun instead of just fun.
Yeah,
along the
like,
way?
so in all seriousness, like 6 months, not even 6 months ago, in February, I was sitting through a computer and I was guiding the agent step by step on going in the right direction.
Uh-huh.
And then in March, you're, like, setting off the agent and he was writing the code.
Yes.
And now I have, like, teams of agents that are kinda more or less doing the work for me, so I'm kinda moving up and up and up levels of abstraction, and it's a lot of fun, right? Because
Yeah.
I wasn't value add in, like, literally typing the code out for anyone.
Right.
Uh,
That's right.
Claude is a much faster typist, but I do have a lot of expertise in running businesses sort of end to end, super amounts of expertise in software. And now I'm finding out, okay, well, Claude can do that. Then I can focus on these things. Now,
Yes.
as the AIs get faster and smarter, that maybe is slowly going away, but maybe it's going away faster than we thought. So we have to keep looking into, and then my solution is I love learning. So you just keep looking into it and seeing what's happening. How can we get to the forefront? What is the most recent, the most coolest, the most highest performing teams to meet your goal? It's not just having fun for the sake of fun, but you have to have a business outcome at the end of it.
Oh,
And
come
stay on top of
on.
that, right?
Come on. Fun
Uh,
for the sake of fun. It's like, I mean, isn't kite surfing fun for the sake of fun?
yes, that is
Yes.
fun for the
And
sake
it's
of
a
fun.
skill. You get to bring things together. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, you can decide whether you go back or not.
And sometimes you do have fun for the sake of fun, even though it's gonna, have no productive, usage whatsoever. I wrote my own shopping and cooking app because it was fun for the sake of fun.
Okay, see,
And
that's pretty cool. Um, I think and I think that that's important. I also think that ties into the learning piece that you mentioned. I don't necessarily think it talks into what we're doing and how we're making money and how we're contributing in the world. I do think fun for the sake of fun allows us to do the contribution for the world and the exchange of value in money and currency of any kind is only is going to continue to come more from, do we make time to do something fun for the sake of it? Do we take a step back and not miss that family event? What is truly important in the landscape today? Who we're responsible for, our relationship to ourselves and that responsibility and the company that we are a part of. Man, it gets complicated, but it doesn't have to be.
I mean, life's complicated, right? So, but we keep trying to tease it apart, and it doesn't have to, I don't think we're gonna get to like, okay, I have found my permanent rules of happiness. They are this. If I do this, in life, I'm
I don't
good.
think we will.
So it's like gonna be embrace uncertainty, lean into it. It's what we were doing with our kids. You just lean into like you're just not gonna know what's gonna happen next, and be okay with that because yeah.
Well, so now I gotta know, and this is I don't know why I'm waiting till the end to ask this. I should have asked it at the beginning. I love tea. Your company's Cosmic Teacup. I actually also love the stars in space. I gotta know, is it because the tea like dissipates in here? I gotta know your story of
Burton Russell
Cosmic
quote,
Teacup.
and it was about cosmic teapots, but cosmic teapots was taken, so I had to settle for cosmic teacups. When I started the company. But it was a theoretical exercise about if there was a teapot that was floating around Saturn or some distant planet that not the most strong telescope could see it, could you say with certainty that it is there or it is not there? Right? And his argument was, well, obviously, like you couldn't, like no one would have any reason to send a teapot over there, and then you can see it. You could relatively well prove that that isn't there, even though you cannot disprove a negative with mathematical certainty of any kind. So for me, that's a fun analogy. Often when you look into software and you're trying to figure out where the bottleneck is, you can have some guesses. You can't always inspect it, and you got to, figure out what is up and what is down.
Thanos, what is bold? What makes it bold? What makes it bold to stop back, to stop chasing milestones, and actually create a resilient delivery system?
You're like the monkey that's going to go up the ladder and grab those bananas because hey, all we're going to do is get wet. So, but they're really tasty bananas. So, in more seriousness, in towards the software angle, I think if you look in software, there's a lot of like burnout and there's a lot of sort of dissatisfaction and there's a lot of fear right now with the AI. So for me, I'm just one person and I have some ideas of how we can do better for this, but I think it's bold to try and sort of make some steps and make that a little better for some people, right? Where you can come out with some ideas and saying, okay, there's a very large pool of ideas of how to do software. These are some good ones. These are some bad ones. There's a lot in the middle. Let's pick smartly and make it happier, faster, and better.
And that brings us to the close of another powerful and fresh perspective on the Bold Business Podcast. In today's volatile landscape, growth is a double-edged sword. To truly thrive, you must engage with your strategy, not just react to the day-to-day. Without absolute alignment, your company faces a stark choice: outmaneuver or be outmaneuvered, grow or get left behind. Thank you for listening, and a special thanks to the Scott Treatment for technical production.